There we go. I wanted to talk a little bit about a pretty controversial topic, I would say, and it may not be what you think. Check my audio real quick. Okay, cool. Your children are being brainwashed, and you're doing nothing about it. Now, what brainwashing do you think I'm talking about? Okay, I want you to think about it for a moment. What brainwashing do you think I'm talking about? Is it something in the schools? Is it TV? Is it some kind of religious cult, something or other, or some kind of political thing? Or why do we allow our children to be brainwashed? It's funny because anything that would represent here is how you can take responsibility for the way you think and what you think, but that challenges your right to an opinion. People will say, that's brainwashing, you're a cult, blah, blah, blah. And if you actually look at, for example, what we're saying, what we're presenting, okay, and this is not something that I've come up with, it's something that I'm learning and applying. All we're showing you is how you can take responsibility for yourself as an individual and for your children to not be able to be brainwashed anymore with anything that is not best for them. Because when you have a high vocabulary, when you have a high ability to process information, you can't be brainwashed. But here's the catch. You have to brainwash yourself to do that because we're all brainwashed and there's nothing you can do about it. Probably not what you thought I was going to say. But think about it. When you're born, little baby, does the baby know any language? Like other than just crying and pooping and stuff like that? No. I mean, I have kids. They didn't know anything. They didn't come out speaking Chinese or Swahili or Arabic or English. They just came out. And then my wife and I started talking to them and talking to each other around them. And eventually they started talking. And we started using Technotutor with them. Even before they could talk, we started using Technotutor with them. And so if you have kids, probably before your kids learned to talk, my kids could already recognize the alphabet. My kids could already recognize all of the numbers from 1 through 20. They could already recognize all the punctuation, all the mathematical symbols. They could distinguish between upper and lower case, all before your kids probably even could say their first word, because we use Technotutor. And now my 3.5-year-old Max, he's building electronic circuits on his own. And he'll bring him to me and he'll say, why doesn't this one work? Or why, look at this, I made this one work. And he's building little circuits and stuff. That's what he does for fun. And you know what he's not doing? He's not watching TV. And we might from time to time have a little YouTube video that he watches or something here and there, but it's always very specific what we're putting there. And we always make sure we watch it first. And what he likes to watch right now is videos about restoring old pieces of hardware. That's what we watch together. He likes to watch videos about electronic circuits and how circuits work and how batteries work and things like that. He likes to watch these little videos of this guy who lives here in Texas who has a duck pond or a fish pond with turtles and stuff that he feeds and takes care of. And he talks about how to do fishing and how to take care of these turtles and all kinds of stuff. He likes that kind of stuff. We don't put stuff in front of him that's going to be like, hey kids, what are you doing today? Blah, blah, blah. We don't put that stuff in front of them because we know that it's brainwashing. But you know what we don't do? We don't go, oh, we don't want to brainwash our kids, because you can't avoid that. Because if your child speaks a language, they were brainwashed. Meaning their brain is initially awash in sounds and noises. And the words that you speak around them, their brain starts realizing, hey, those sounds are being used a lot. I need to keep track of those. I need to have an easy neural pathway to keep accessing that very easily so I don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be like a struggle to process that information. And the ones that it doesn't hear, they fade away. That's called neural pruning. And that's why after a certain period of time, when children are very young, they can't hear, they can't distinguish. So like, I don't know what the exact numbers are. You can look it up, but there's a certain age prior to which infants of any race, background, culture, country, wherever, can distinguish between sounds in the English language and the Chinese language. But after a certain age, when they're exposed to, let's say, English primarily, they can't distinguish those sounds in Chinese anymore. It's like they just don't hear the difference. Like I might be saying Qinghua, and then I might say Qinghua, and you're like, you just said the same thing twice. But to a Chinese person, they're like, no, I said Qinghua, not Qinghua. And you're like, what? That's the same thing. And I'm just making it up right now. I'm pretending. But my point is, in their language, they would hear the very subtle difference. It would be obvious to them. And to us, it sounds like literally the same thing. And so with a child, their body, their brain is sort of is getting rid of all the stuff that it doesn't need. It uses advanced statistical analysis, and it does this in quantum time. It's not even it's not even really a repetitive process per se. It's whatever they're hearing in those first 7 years. It's absorbing that, it's taking that in, and you're programming your child just like you program a computer. But you don't know how to program a computer, do you? Just like you don't know how to program a child, and yet you do it. It's interesting. Parents don't know how to program their children, and yet they do it. So the problem is not that they don't know how to do it. It's that they don't know that they're doing it, and they don't know how to reprogram themselves so that when they're programming their children, they're programming with what's best rather than what's not best. Because if you say things around a child that are incorrect, the child will learn that. So if you teach your child that there's a fat fucker from the North Pole who wears red clothes, whose name is an anagram for Satan, that he slides down your chimney and delivers presents, and if you're naughty or nice, depends on what, that'll determine what you get. So you're therefore controlling your child's behavior to always be nice, so they will receive a reward. And that way you can prevent them from doing the wrong things. You've literally just brainwashed your child to be a slave, to be a follower. You haven't educated them or brainwashed them, if you want to use that term, to be able to reason effectively. Because if you ask my son, Max, what is Santa Claus? He'll tell you it's a fat fucker who comes down your chimney. It's not real. Parents tell their kids about it. And you say, why? He'll say, because they want to be able to manipulate their behavior so that they'll be good most of the year and they'll do what the parent wants. And if you ask Max, well, why don't they just tell their kids what's the best behavior and why it's best so that children can do it freely? And he'll say, because the parents don't know, because they have a low vocabulary. He understands these things, and he's only 3.5. And you might say, but what about the magic of childhood? First of all, if you think the magic of childhood requires you to lie to your children about how reality works, you're a child abuser. 2, my children, both children, have a magical childhood because their parents are never yelling at them. Their parents are never punishing them. Their parents are always supporting what they see in their environment that they could be creative with and have fun with. And their parents are always with them and holding them and talking to them and hugging them and kissing them and telling them how amazing they are and giving them opportunities and teaching them and giving them vocabulary that's 3, 4, 5 years beyond where they're at, so that by the time they get to be 5 or 6, they're not going to have to learn the alphabet at the tail end of their natural learning ability phase, when they were automatically absorbing everything, when now it becomes very difficult to learn things and it takes a lot of spaced repetition. And even then it only stays up here and it never becomes a part of you where it just comes out automatically. And so even though you go through the education system and come out of it seeming like you can read, you actually can't read, because when you pick up a book, you read it, you can say the words, you think you know it, but then you don't do anything with it. It just goes up here in your head as part of your personality, and you project an image of knowing something, but you literally have nothing to show for it. You can't do anything. And so we have a society of people who can't do anything. All they have is their personality. All they have is their preferences. All they have is the sports team that's been given to them, that's who you should like or dislike. All they have is, these are the TV shows that we created for you, but that don't represent in any way an example of humanity and society that's best for everybody, but always in some way reinforcing the consumerist system that we live in. And what's the alternatives if you don't like the system? Well, then you have the Black Lives Matter, and then you have all the LGBT, and you have all this other stuff, which is also completely dysfunctional. which doesn't present any real solution. It's only simply trying to destabilize the structures that exist. So we have a society where people can't process information because their parents lied to them about fucking Santa Claus. And their parents didn't even know why they were doing it. And then you have the people who say, well, it's because we don't hit the kids and spank the kids enough. They just don't know discipline. Well, that produced a society of fucking retards who were hit by their kids, who then ended up raising a generation of retarded kids with no self-discipline and no self-esteem because they weren't hit. So if hitting your kids is a solution, then how come it produced a generation of parents that didn't hit their kids? That's not the answer. It's not about hit your kids. It's about support your kids to develop an effective vocabulary. It's about support them to have high self-esteem based on the fact that they are competent and confident in doing whatever they want to do. Do you know what happens whenever we're out and about and there's some we don't know at the playground or whatever? You know what my son does? He goes right up to him and says, "Hi, my name's Max. What's your name?" Right? And I know you're going to say, "Oh, he's going to talk to strangers. What's he going to like get kidnapped because he's friendly with everybody?" Do you think there's ever a moment when we're out and about where my son is out of my sight? Do you think that? Because that's what most people do. They go 8, 9, 10, 12 hours of the fucking day, don't even know where their kids. I mean, they know where they're at, but they don't know what's going on. They're in a room somewhere with strangers around a bunch of other people and kids who are influencing them and adults who are influencing them. That's called a school, by the way, or a daycare. So do you actually care? Because when you put your kid in the school, they're being brainwashed. And now look what's happening. You know, we did a video on this, Drake and Asif and I, about, you know, the post-COVID schools. And well, we were right. It wasn't just conspiracy theory. That is what is happening. And I have friends who are now pulling their kids and saying, I'm not going to put my kids in school anymore because it's just going to be abuse, making them wear masks and not talk to anybody or sit near anybody. And they're like, I'm so grateful that you had us get techno-tutor, because even though we didn't understand the value of it then, now we do. Because now we realize we can't put our kid in school because we don't want them exposed to that. But you know, really the reason I wanted to start the video today was more about the point of when you drive down the road, look at all those billboards flashing by you. Think about that. You're driving down the road and there's a billboard. Boom, 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 boom. Do you not think that that's programming your child? And look at the billboards, right? We've got 2 Black Lives Matter billboards up in Houston. But you know, we've got a lot more of alcohol billboards. And billboards and images that are billboards that use sexual imagery that's very subtle to program people to recognize those brands automatically and to desire those brands. Why should we have a world where if I drive down the street with my kids in the car and they're looking out the windows, even if they're not paying attention, subconsciously that stuff's going in there? Is that acceptable? And why is it that you're not willing to do anything about it? And then you say that you love your kids and you say that you love other people and then you have compassion. And then you have the people who are really delusional and they say that they're wearing the mask because they are compassionate. If you were compassionate, you would have lifted a finger to make sure that alcohol billboards are not advertising to children. You don't care. If you cared, you'd consider what I'm saying. You'd investigate techno-tutor and you'd be a part of the solution. Because it's not just about the fact that you need techno-tutor for yourself, because you are brainwashed by this system to be a slave. But the only way that we can solve this problem is to give people the tools so they can unfuck what's in between here, which is their programming, so that we stop programming generations of children with the incorrect brainwashing of being a slave, of being a follower. Because at a certain point, the governments are just going to put as much control as possible so that we just stay at home, keep our fucking mouths shut, don't cause a problem, don't leave your home, don't go anywhere, don't do anything, don't think about anything, just sit and veg out in front of constant entertainment in front of a screen. And then it'll become virtual reality, and then you're really fucked. Is that the reality that you want to live in? Is that the legacy that you want to leave? Is that the environment you want to leave behind, where you just sat idly by while it happened right in front of you? Why? Because you're afraid? Or is it because you're stupid? Is it because you're programmed and you're brainwashed to not question anything? So I'm doing something about it. And the people who are a part of my circle, my network, we're doing something about it. And you know what? That's not revolution. We're not doing that bullshit. We're not protesting. We're implementing the solution in our lives and showing that it's possible for others. So if you want to be a part of that, it's a time that you reach out and you say, hey, I want to be a part of the solution. I don't want to just sit by while children are being brainwashed into being zombies. Because at the end of the day, when you die, you will have to face whatever excuse you had. So time is running out. It's time to wake up.